In the heart of the Mediterranean, nestled on the island of Sicily, lies the bustling city of Palermo. But this will not be a story about the city of Palermo. In this video, we'll follow the story of a stone, not just any kind, but a stone of such importance, of such grandeur, that it's honored to bear the name of the city itself, the Palermo Stone. This ancient chunk of black basalt is a essential nondescript shield-shaped fragment no bigger than a child's toy box. It rests peacefully at the Antonio Salinas Regional Archaeological Museum, its surface etched with such secrets that would make even the Sphinx of Egypt look like a well-read book. In fact, Palermo Stone was never just a stone. It is one of 7 surviving fragments of a large stele known as the Royal Records of the Old Kingdom of Ancient Egypt. Naturally, after we mentioned the Royal Chronicles, already the question started to gnaw at you. For this, without wasting time, we jump to the interesting part. Imagine the time when Egyptian kings and queens wearing crowns of gold and lapis lazuli ruled the lands of the Nile. Their regions were marked by floods and famines, festivals and wars, all of which were carefully engraved on this stone, creating an annual record of their lives and legacy. From the first to the beginning of the 5th dynasty, royal records served as a tangible link to a past that was almost as old as civilization itself. You may be wondering why this plaque is named after a city that is so far from the country of the pyramids and the Sphinx. Oh, that's another interesting story on itself. The Palermo Stone, although an Egyptian artifact, found its final resting place not in the sands of Egypt, but in a museum in Palermo, Italy. Thus, it acquired the name of the city in which it was placed, constantly a reminder of its long and incredible journey from the banks of the Nile to the heart of the Mediterranean. But remember that not everything is as it seems. Hidden within the rows of hieroglyphs that cover the stone are mysteries, tales of kings, and events that challenge our understanding of history itself. Bolder claims even claim that our history has been deliberately falsified to cover up the real one. In fact, the Palermo Stone can be called a beacon that casts its beam of knowledge across the misty abyss of history, inviting us to look beyond the veil of time. Look more closely. We will see that its fragments are actually the oldest surviving historical texts from ancient Egypt, and the inscriptions on them are the backbone of our understanding of the history of the Old Kingdom. 3 of these fragments are in the Archaeological Museum in Palermo, Italy. Another 3 are in the Cairo Museum in Egypt, and the 7th and final fragment is in the University of London in England. Although the exact date of creation of this magnificent record remains unknown, it is believed to have been made during one of the earliest dynasties, more than 5,000 years ago. It holds memories of the time when the pharaohs first began to dream of pyramids and eternal life, when civilization was just a baby learning to walk on the banks of the Nile. Every hieroglyph engraved on the surface of the stone, every name, and every event is a thread of the rich tapestry of ancient Egypt. Let's look more specifically at the Palermo Stone. It is not some delicate, soft limestone that lends itself easily to the chisel. Basalt requires patience and high craftsmanship. The artifact is an irregular shaped fragment of a shield approximately 43.5 centimeters high, 25 centimeters wide, and 6.5 centimeters thick at its thickest part. In its overall form, it was at least 2 meters high. On the dark canvas, the scribe engraved in the story in 6 horizontal bands or registries of intricate hieroglyphic text. The lines move from right to left, like a river of knowledge that flows from the past to the future, carrying with it wisdom of our ancient ancestors. On the face of the stone, the first registry introduces us to the pre-dynastic kings of Lower Egypt. Increasingly, he talks about kings, gods who ruled these lands and their people long before the official dating of the Egyptian civilization. They came from heaven and reigned for millennia. The following registers weaved a thread of royal chronicles, listing key events in each year of the reigns of the 1st to 4th dynasty kings. On the back of the stone, the narrative continues, describing the events during the reign of the pharaohs until the 5th dynasty. The events of the kingdom are described in 2 different forms. The first, basic format, is a kind of ancient diary detailing the date, the king's name or title, and the events in the infinitive. Year 1, 4th month, 13th day. Unification of the 2 lands. Tour of the wall. Height of the Nile, 6 cubits. The second format, known as the royal label, is more personal and documents the king's monumental works dedicated to the gods. Year 5, a work which the king of Upper and Lower Egypt, Uzbekuf, made as his monument to. Below are the names of the gods. But the Palermo Stone was more than a royal diary. It served a wider purpose. Written on durable material, these records spread the news of royal activities and influenced painting, a vivid portrait of a civilization and its rulers. The records reflect the king's many roles. He was not only a ruler, but also a channel of communication between the divine and human worlds, the high priest of all cults, and the earthly embodiment of the sun and sky god Horus. Records also document the following of Horus: a biennial royal tour in which the king traveled throughout the country to meet his people and exercise control over the economic and political development of the provinces. However, the duties of the king extended beyond the boundaries of his kingdom. The inscriptions preserve the stories of his battles, with the names of the years often associated with significant political events. The battles the king fought with Egypt's neighbors and enemies are recorded in the royal inscriptions. The king is depicted as an all-powerful hero who, with support of the gods, attacks the ill-intentioned enemy. But can the tales written on the stone be trusted? Is everything in them true? Or are they cleverly woven myths, half-truths created to paint a picture of a world that never really existed? To understand, let's dive into the heart of the matter. The story that this stone whispers is no ordinary chronicle, but a true time capsule. As we've already connected in the above bar, the stone introduced us to several mysterious pre-dynastic rulers of Lower Egypt. Rulers named Sekka, Tiu, Neheb, etc. 7 in total are recorded. Their stories, like themselves, are a mystery to us to this day. Apart from their names and the trace of their long reign, there are no further details about their personalities. After this ethereal prelude, the stone changes its tone, and its narrative becomes a list of kings and queens, gods and mortals. It deals with pharaohs whose reign spanned the period from the 1st to the 4th dynasty, and each year of the reign is carefully noted. A description of the events follows: battles, temples built, feasts, floods. We also find special records related to the Nile and its annual floods, which were measured and described, testifying to the vital role of this river in the life of the ancient Egypt. Ultimately, though, as we know, history is often a version of events that people have decided to agree on. And in the case of the Palermo Stone, we have to struggle with the quandrum: which part of what is written on it is fact and what is legend? It is the fact that the records plunge even further back into the darkest depths of time, into an era shrouded in mystery, into the time of rulers that preceded the dynasties of ancient Egypt, that has caused much debate and questions of the records on the tablet. These rulers, these prehistoric kings, are not part of our known history. But if we look for any support, the stone's narrative actually bears a striking resemblance to other ancient texts. The Turin Royal Canon and the Sumerian King List, for which we have a detailed video on our channel, reflect similar themes, chronologies, and rulers. They speak of gods who came down to earth and ruled for thousands of years. It is possible that these ancient texts, although separated by vast spaces and time periods, describe the same reality. Here we come to the most controversial part of the story. The Palermo Stone, like other similar texts, speaks of these enigmatic rulers in terms that suggest something more than human. These records speak of them as gods, as beings not of this earth. This gives rise to a tantalizing theory, as improbable as it is controversial, the theory of ancient astronauts. Could it be that these gods, these prehistoric rulers, were alien visitors? Could it be that they were ancient astronauts who came to Earth and ruled over its inhabitants? The theory is as fascinating as it is controversial. Like any good story, this one about the Palermo Stone is not without its conflicts. It is a battlefield of ideas. On one side are the traditionalists who firmly believe in the historical authenticity of the stone. On the other are the skeptics who think the stories are more myth than fact, more allegory than history. Traditionalist scholars and researchers who've devoted their lives to the study of the stone passionately defend its historical authenticity. They emphasize the meticulous details of the chronicles, the precise description of events, and the methodical cataloging of rulers. How could such a document not be as based on facts? Skeptics, however, are not so easily swayed. They raise eyebrows at the mention of prehistoric rulers and ancient astronauts, questioning the credibility of the text, which speaks of gods ruling over thousands of years. Could such a story be the product of a rich imagination? They ask you. They say the stone not as a literal historical document, but as a mythological, allegorical text, the fruit of ancient beliefs and folklore. They argue that the stone's narratives should not be taken at face value, but interpreted and understood within a wider culture and religious context. Egyptologist James Allen, for his part, considers the stone to be the most important piece of evidence for the Old Kingdom. Researcher Zachary Sitchin claims that there were ancient astronauts, and he sees in the stone a proof of this theory. And according to him, definitely, some of the depicted figures are unnaturally compared to everything on Earth. Who is right? Who is wrong? In this story, the answer is not clear-cut. It depends on who you ask, what you believe, and how you interpret the story. So in the end, the story in the Palermo Stone becomes a tale of two worlds. One is a world of fact and history, of kings and pharaohs, of Nile floods and ancient festivals. The other is a world of speculation and conjecture, or extraterrestrial and advanced civilizations, mysteries, and unknowns. Both worlds are part of the story, and together they add to its charm. Because in the world of ancient history, as in any other world, not everything is as it seems. If you find this video valuable, share it with your friends. Let us know in a comment which topics will be of interest to you.